So in today's video, we're going to be ranking all of the 1-star legendary weapon effects for, well, your weapons. Now, a quick breakdown. When you roll weapons in this game, when there are 1-star, 2-star, or 3-star, those 3 perks have a certain perk pool, and we're going over that in today's video. Today will be all the 1-star perks, meaning you can't get 2 of these perks on the same weapon, so we're ranking them in such a fashion. If you guys want to see the 2-star perks and the 3-star perks in future videos, tell me in the comments down below if you want to know even more. Also, really quick shout out to the channel's partner, Instigating. They're currently running a free monthly game giveaway in the comments down below. Or if you're just looking to buy some cheap games, there's another link down there where you can buy games with my code and it supports me directly. I just want to give a quick shout out to all the people that are actually buying Fallout 76 with my code. It really means a lot. There is timestamps on this video, so if there's any perks that you want to just hop right into or curious about, down below right on the timeline. Plus, it's in alphabetical order because I love you. So the first one up is anti-armor. Now, anti-armor ignores 50% of your target's armor, and immediately we are going to throw this up into S tier. Anti-armor anything in Fallout 76 is honestly almost a necessity when it comes to certain weapons. Shotguns really much need it. AR builds, they don't need it as much, but it definitely helps out. Anti-armor at the end of the day is another form of damage. It's actually a better form of damage because why would you want to do 12% more damage and have 6% of it be resisted by armor when you could just make your gun's damage 50% better against armor? Definitely, if you have any weapon that drops with this, hold on to it. And if you're looking to craft the best weapons in the game personally, anti-armor is one of the best perks in the game. Up next, we have Aristocrats. Damage increases for every 1,000 caps you have, up to 50% bonus damage. If you're curious about the numbers, you need 30,000 caps to get that 50% damage. And honestly, if you're later into the game and you establish enough currency, this I will throw into depends. It really depends if you're later into the game or not. If you're a new player, this is an F tier perk easily. But it's honestly really simple. If you're rich when it comes to your cap stash, definitely worth using. If you're not rich, don't even look at it. It's not worth your time. Up next, we have Assassins, which is plus 50% bonus damage to humans. Now, I'm trying to think realistically when ranking these perks, and when it comes to specific damage perks towards a certain faction, they can definitely be really, really strong. But on the flip side of things, it makes them useless with every other faction. So, when it comes to any of these perks on the list, excluding 1 or 2 that I'm going to get into later, I'm just going to throw them into depends. It depends on if you're going against that faction or not. If you're only using that weapon for only that faction, then it's really, really good. But if you're using the same weapon for every single faction within the game, it's pretty much going to be useless. So it's not bad, it's not good, it goes into the depends category. Something else I should say for Assassins, that 50% damage actually counts in PvP. If you so happen to be a PvP player, I guess that probably ranks it higher up for you. Up next, we have Berserkers. Lower damage resistance increases your weapon damage up to 50%. So if your build has 0 damage resistance, you're going to be doing 50% more damage, which is basically a glass cannon sort of build. If you want to run this, it's not bad, but nowadays it's just really not that good. That's going to be the first one I'm going to throw into F tier. Personally, not my favorite. I would never run it. It's basically a worse version of the Bloodied build, where alternatively with the Bloodied build, you could get a lot more health benefits. And everybody's favorite, Bloodied. Bloodied increases your damage up to 95% as health decreases, and if you're curious, you need to be below 5% health in order to have that 95% damage. Most of the time, people are hovering between the 10 to 20% health, still giving them 80% damage, which isn't too bad. Bloodied is the current meta with many, many builds, but it can get very stale and very boring. And for a lot of players, they just don't like having no health, because playing this game with only 20% health is a higher resource cost. It's just a higher micromanaging than it is just normally playing. It did deserve S tier back in the day when it just dominated everything, but nowadays it's very deserving of a high spot A tier. It is definitely still viable, but it's not as good as it used to be, but definitely a fun perk for people that are looking for that type of playstyle. Executioners gives you plus 50% damage when a target is below 40% health. This really depends on what you're using. Most people are going to be rocking this with explosives, melees, or shotguns. For that reason, it definitely goes into A tier. I'm not going to put it above Bloodied because it has a lot less use cases, but it's a very very straightforward perk where you just do more damage the lower health they are, allowing you to finish off targets easier. Some people don't like that it's only for the second portion of their health bar, but other playstyles actually benefit from this perk, giving it a nice A spot. Exterminators gives plus 50% damage to Mirelurks and bugs. This one I will also put into the depends category. If you're looking to do more damage to those certain enemies, then yes, it's good. If not, then it's not. Furious gives plus 5% damage after each consecutive hit on the same targets, up to 45%. Now, the stacks reset to 0 if you don't hit that target for the next 10 seconds, so it lasts longer than a lot of people think. So it does work with snipers, shotguns, as well as fully auto weapons. There's no real detriment if you're using slower firing weapons. But the only unfortunate thing with this is the stacks do reset on target swap. So if you shoot one guy 4 times and another dude runs up on you and you shoot that target, that new target will now transition the stacks and the old target has 0 stacks. So you're just resetting yourself. But something that's very amazing is when it comes to shotguns, specifically on Furious, shotguns shoot 8 pellets. So if you shoot with a shotgun 1 time, that will count as multiple hits for this perk. Meaning, if all 8 pellets hit with the shotgun, the next shot will not do plus 5% damage, it will do the full plus 45% damage on the next shot. That alone with shotgun builds puts Furious up into the A tier, above the Executioner perk, because more builds can utilize Furious. Ghoul Slayers gives plus 50% damage to ghouls, just like all the other faction perks. It goes into the depends category if you're looking to actually do more damage to that faction. Next up is Gourmands. I think I said that right, like Gourmands. Damage increases up to 24% as your thirst and hunger meter are filled. Now for this barrier to take full effect, you need to be at least 80% full on food and water to get that 24% damage. Most people, if you have your food and water up, it's not too bad, but at the same time, there's other perks that have way easier conditions that do a lot more damage. This is a good beginner perk, I will give it that, but as a overall perk, I have to put it into the F tier, and honestly, you're better off going with anything else. Hunters does 50% more damage to animals, just like the rest of the faction perks. We throw it up into depends. Instigating gives the player plus 100% damage or double damage when your target's health is full. This immediately goes into the S tier for multiple reasons. It is a necessity for most melee builds in this game, very good with shotgun builds, explosive builds, and especially sniper builds. This is a sniper build's best friend, picking off targets from a distance, doubling your damage when the enemy's health is full. The only weakness with this perk is playing with people or playing with friends or being a part of public events. Probably don't use weapons with this perk in a co-op sense, because it's bound to happen where other players are going to deal damage to that target before you can get a shot in, but definitely a S tier perk in the right circumstances and carries a lot of really good builds. Juggernaut's damage increases up to 25% as your health increases. To get the max 25%, you must have more than 90% of your maximum health. Honestly, in Fallout 76, if you're topping yourself off and you're getting maximum health using Stimpaks every few seconds, this can be good. You could be a nice tank build, but because vampires exist, I'm going to put Juggernauts into the depends category. Junkies gives a player plus 10% damage per addiction that you have, up to 50%. Now, if you're addicted to Psycho, Mentats, all those other different drugs in Fallout, you could make a pretty decent Junkies build, and that 50% will always be there as long as you don't cure your addictions, and this build is actually pretty damn viable. Surprisingly, this gets a nice A tier spot for me, as if you're going for that route where you're pumping drugs all the time, getting a bunch of damage out of them, and you're just constantly high, basically, it's the high build, the Junkie build, this perk can be very powerful. For the Medics perk, VATS crits will heal you and your group. Now, the healing is not really that much, it's 5% of the player's maximum HP per second, and the team radius is about 550 meters according to the wiki. If you're really trying to support your friends, there's many different ways of doing this, and honestly, the healing isn't all that much. Stimpaks are pretty common, so is food to heal. Vampires is also a thing. I know I keep bringing up that perk, but we'll go over it later. Bringing the Medic perk down into F tier, I would never recommend running Medics, and it's one of those weird perks that just really shouldn't be in the game. Mutant Slayers gives 50% bonus damage to super mutants. Once again, that falls in our faction category of depends, and that's not to be confused with the mutants prefix. That increases our damage up to 25% for each mutation the player has. Each mutation will grant you 5% bonus damage, and if you're later on into the game, you probably have a crap ton of mutations. I would recommend straying away from this perk just because the damage is too dang low. Yes, you're probably going to have mutations later on, and it does have its effects, it does have its benefits, but 25% damage is not that much. But just for the simple fact that most players in this game will be having mutations at some point, I will throw this to the very top of depends. Because honestly, it's not a bad perk, and if you're running mutations and you don't want to use other weapon damage perks, then this is honestly pretty dang viable, just not recommended for new players up to a certain point, because you're probably not going to have many mutations early on, and not even keeping them early on. Nocturnal increases the player damage by 50% at night, and yes, this can be very good with a stealth build, and I've seen it many times, so I'll put that right towards the top of the depends category. A bunch of cool, fun stealth builds are very, very nice, and Nocturnals is just free damage. The only downfall is, of course, you need to wait until nighttime, which can be very annoying because there's a lot of periods in this game where it looks like it's dark outside, but the bonus damage isn't proccing because it's technically daytime. I don't know if they're ever going to fix that. It's just been a long time bug in this game, so it's buggy, but if you use it the right way, it can be a viable perk. One of my personal favorite perks in this game is the quad perk, and I'm throwing it directly into S tier, and the quad perk just increases your magazine size by 300%. Now, a lot of people think that triples your magazine size, but mathematically it actually quadruples it. That's why it's called quad. It's very good on things like the double barrel shotgun. It will make the magazine from 2 shots to 8 shots. Rocket launchers can get this. Auto grenade launchers, combat shotguns, ARs, any gun can get this, and it just makes the gun so much better in so many different cases. And it turns some guns into a minigun with the amount of bullets they can shoot. I've seen 10mm SMGs get upwards of 120 bullets with a drum mag. Really, really great perk. And if you have any weapon that rolls with this, or you're seeking to get more out of your favorite weapons in this game, I highly, highly recommend the quad roll. Stalker's prefix, if not in combat, plus 100% VATS accuracy at a increased AP cost of plus 50%. If you're running a sniper build, sure. Any other use case, this perk is pretty damn bad, throwing it directly into F tier. Now, the Suppressor's perk reduces your target's damage output by 25% for 5 seconds. Immediately, this goes into the bottom of depends, and I'm going to say this. It doesn't deserve the F spot due to the fact that it's a great debuffer for certain world bosses. If you have 1 or 2 people in your group running this perk to just stack on the anti-damage, it helps out tremendously when avoiding certain attacks, avoiding certain mechanics, so it's definitely not useless, but it's mainly catered for group play, and I definitely would not recommend this whatsoever if you're a solo player or just playing in a group with your friends. It's not worth the slot. Troubleshooters is plus 50% bonus damage to robots. Now, I know I put a bunch of the faction perks into depends, but Troubleshooters I'm putting into A tier, just because there's a lot of very, very tanky robots in this game, and they're probably one of the most tankiest factions to go up against, so having this perk is so nice, and you deal so much more damage to those robots, making it easier to launch nukes, making it easier to get your nuclear keycards from the cargo bots. I highly recommend this perk if you're fighting a lot of robots and just want to sweep right through them. Now, the 2-shot perk, it does exactly what it says. It increases your projectile count to +1 on any weapon in the game. This is super powerful, and I love this perk to death. It also increases damage of the gun by 25%, and all it really does is increase the amount of recoil it has, which I don't think anyone cares about. This easily deserves the 2nd place spot into S tier. One of the best perks in Fallout 76 if you want to do the maximum amount of damage. I recommend putting this on explosives, or even better, I've seen some fully automatic weapons with this, and it makes the damage absolutely insane. Now, you remember that perk I talked about a while ago by the name of Vampires? Restores 2% of your maximum health over 2 seconds when you hit an enemy. The beautiful thing about this is the health restored has no cooldown. So if you're using a Gatling laser, if you're using a minigun or anything that shoots really fast, you're constantly proccing that health regeneration over and over and over again. But the amazing thing is if you're using a shotgun with that 8 projectiles like I previously mentioned, Vampires will proc 8 times, meaning you get 16% of your total HP within 2 seconds. That is absolutely insane. Probably one of the best perks for shotgun builds, one of the best perks for fully auto builds, builds, heavy builds with miniguns and a lot of fire rate and magazine size. You could literally tank the endgame bosses with this perk if used correctly. Easily deserves S tier. If there's an S plus tier, this would go in it. For the final 1-star perk, we have Zealots, which increases damage to Scorch by 50%. This one I'm easily throwing into the A tier just because of the Scorch Beast Queen does count as a scorched enemy, and it makes that whole boss fight so much easier and so much better. But if you're not going to be running that event, I would put it into the depends category, but due to the fact that it's one of the most popular events in the game, that's why I put it up there, and it's well deserving of that spot. And that's the video, guys. If you did enjoy it, make sure you hit the like button down below, as it does spread out my Fallout content to more people in the community. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on another video from me, guys. Stay safe, and I'll see you all later.